Atiq Ahmed. On Monday, one of the key accused, Arbaz, was gunned down by the police. This in an encounter in Prayagraj. The police also arrested a Ghazipur native, Sadakat Khan, for his alleged involvement in the murder. This crackdown is meant to send a message. Mafia Raj in UP is coming to an end. The Chief Minister in the Assembly said, "We will mix mafia with mitti. We will bring down the Mafia Raj down to the sands of Uttar Pradesh." So is this bulldozer action sending the right message to the mafias? Or is this extrajudicial killing, as the opposition claims it is?
These words by the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh reverberate as the state government begins the process of bulldozing criminals. The Prayagraj Development Authority demolished the house of kin of mafioso turned politician Atiq Ahmed. This house, belonging to one of Atiq's aides, is said to be where his wife Shaista was currently residing. This after Atiq Ahmed's own house was demolished for having been illegally constructed in September 2020 as part of an action against him. This was a follow-up of the raids conducted on Ahmed in Lucknow, where 2 of his luxury cars were seized. This crackdown is meant to send a message. Mafia Raj is coming to an end. A political slugfest ensued between the ruling BJP and the Samajwadi Party in Uttar Pradesh, with the Chief Minister slamming his predecessor's patronage for Bahubalis like Atiq.
देखिए, लॉ एंड ऑर्डर डायलॉग से नहीं ठीक होगा. लॉ एंड ऑर्डर किसी डायलॉग से नहीं ठीक हो सकता है कि मिट्टी में मिला देंगे. आपने मिट्टी में मिला देने के लिए कहा, अमेठी में 2 की हत्या हो गई.
साजिशकर्ता की फोटो वायरल हो रही थी कल, और कोई उससे भाग नहीं सकता. लोग कहें कि साहब सोशल मीडिया का जमाना है, लोग कुछ कर लेंगे. अरे हाथ मिला रहे हैं, पीछे आपकी पार्टी का सिंबल लगा हुआ है, और तब भी आप उससे मुंह मोड़ने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं.
The state faces allegations of overreach and extrajudicial action. Amid that, a state minister recalled notorious criminal Vikas Dubey's encounter in 2020 and linked it to Atiq Ahmed.
इतना जरूर कहना चाहते हैं, जब ये पकड़े जाए कहीं तो गाड़ी में बैठते समय ज्यादा हाय तोबा ना करें, नहीं तो ड्राइवर असंतुलित होकर डिस्टर्ब होकर कहीं गाड़ी पलट ना जाए.
Following the crackdown, fear has gripped the family of jailed gangster Atiq Ahmed, with both him and his incarcerated brother Ashraf claiming before a court that the Uttar Pradesh police want to murder them in a fake encounter. A massive police hunt is on for Atiq's other son Asad, who was captured on CCTV footage leading the shooters who killed Umesh Pal in Prayagraj last week. The link is clear, but as the investigation progresses, the politics peaks too. Is UP government's action justified or illegal?
So let's tell you what this row, this controversy is all about. On the 25th of January 2005, BSP MLA Raju Pal was shot dead by assailants outside his residence in Prayagraj. On the 24th of February, just a couple of days ago, one of the key witnesses in that murder, Umesh Pal, was murdered by unknown assailants. Pal, along with one of the security personnel, died, while another one is critically injured. The Uttar Pradesh police booked 7 people, including former MP Atiq Ahmed and his family, in connection with this case. According to the police, Atiq's son hatched the conspiracy, and one of the accused has been identified as Arbaz. He was shot in an exchange of fire near Nehru Park in Prayagraj. And today, bulldozers razed Zafar Ahmed's house, who is Atiq Ahmed's close aide and a member of his gang. The Prayagraj Development Authority started demolishing the house located in Chakia under the Kareli police station limits in Prayagraj. It is said to be one of Khalid Zafar, where Shaista Parveen, who is the wife of Atiq Ahmed, and her 2 children were living currently, because Atiq Ahmed's own house was demolished for having been illegally constructed. This happened in September 2020. The PDA Vice Chairman Arvind Kumar Chauhan confirmed the demolition and said that the house was illegally constructed in violation of all norms and is therefore being demolished. And notices were issued to the owner and all the requisite processes were followed. Now, it's not just Atiq Ahmed. There are other key faces, big faces in this crackdown in Uttar Pradesh. Atiq Ahmed, the notorious mafia don cum politician, he's been named in the police FIR in the Umesh Pal murder case. He is alleged to have hatched the entire plot. Atiq's brother, Ashraf, also named in the police FIR. The assailants met him in jail. Now, Atiq's wife, Shaista Parveen, she has also been named in the FIR. She was in fact said to be living in this house that was demolished today. Sadaqat Khan has been pictured with politicians from across the spectrum, clearly well connected. The plot was allegedly hatched at his hostel. One of Atiq's sons, Asad, is seen in the shootout murder video. He's been caught on camera firing at Umesh Pal. Nafis Ahmed is another assailant. He's also the owner of the Creta car that is seen in the shootout. He is right now on the run. Arbaz is also the shooter. He's one of the accused. He was killed in an encounter a few days ago. Gudu Muslim, another shooter. He's absconding right now. Mohammad Ghulam, another shooter who's also absconding. Now, the bulldozer action that we saw today is the latest in a long list of actions taken by the Yogi government to curb Mafia Raj. Now, in 2020, Vikas Dubey, he had 60 criminal cases against him. He was killed in an encounter with the police. This happened in July 2020 after he tried to escape from custody. Over 50 crores of his property had been seized and demolished. Mukhtar Ansari, the BSP MLA, has 40 cases of murder, kidnapping and extortion. Ansari is currently in the Banda jail. He was, the UP cops have seized, freed or demolished property worth over 100 crores linked to Ansari. Atiq Ahmed, we mentioned, Don-turned-politician, currently in the Sabarmati jail. He's a MP, former MP from Phulpur, a five-time MLA. In fact, he's currently under arrest in Sabarmati jail for an attempt to kill a teacher at the Agricultural Research Institute in Prayagraj. Nearly 100 criminal cases against him, the latest for the murder of Umesh Pal. Property worth over 150 crores have been seized from him and his family. Sundar Bhati, behind bars for the last 7 years and lodged in the Sonbhadra jail, has around 55 heinous cases, particularly in western UP. Many of his associates have been arrested in the crackdown. Property, flats and vehicles over 50 crores seized from him. Khan Mubarak is a dreaded sharpshooter of underworld don Chota Rajan, arrested by the UP STF in July 2017. He has more than 3 dozen cases against his name and is currently lodged in the Hardoi jail. So let me now open this up to our full panelists. Yogi Adityanath says this is a message, an unambiguous, unequivocal one, to the mafias, jinko mitti mein mila denge, whereas the opposition, led by Akhilesh Yadav, saying that this is simply extrajudicial killings. Let me now go across to Anla Singh of the BJP, Ghanshyam Tiwari of the Samajwadi Party, Arun Anand is consulting editor with First Post, and B.L. Vora, former DGP. Ghanshyam Tiwari, let me start with you first. I just outlined the mafiosi whose properties have been destroyed, including today Atiq Ahmed's relative Zafar Ahmed, whose house was demolished in Prayagraj. Why is the Samajwadi Party opposed to this action? And politically speaking, by opposing this action, aren't you being seen as speaking for or standing with mafiosi?
Good evening, Zaka, to you, my fellow co-panelists and the viewers. Let me start with the second question first, that are we seen closer to mafiosi or supporting the mafiosi? BJP has the infamy for the first time in our 70 years of constitutional functioning, that there are more than 100 members of parliament from a single party with criminal charges in the current sitting Lok Sabha. It also has the infamy that there are 111 members of Legislative Assembly in Uttar Pradesh from BJP who have criminal charges. The cabinet of Mr. Adityanath himself, Keshav Prasad Maurya, you can name the leaders. You take any newspaper, you will find the infamy of BJP. For example, the newspaper today that talks about the Wrestling Federation and Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. So BJP is not the party that is against mafiosi. They are the party that has the colors of mafiosi. As far as the action in Uttar Pradesh is concerned, the bizarre, sensational murders in Prayagraj exposed the hollow claims of Yogi Adityanath government. So the response of Adityanath government is similar sensationalism. The challenge with such a response is that when you create a process which is extrajudicial and you create fake grounds to justify that process, then the same process will one day come and demolish the house of Dikshit Parivar, a poor man who the same administration said was a criminal, and his son was made to go naked in front of the police in biting cold. His wife and daughter were their house bulldozed, their hut bulldozed. They were the police ran away while they were burning. So the point is that you have a government that looks at crime control as a tamasha for showmanship, but does not fundamentally alter the criminal nature that has entered
Okay,
the
Anila
BJP
Singh,
politics.
please respond. You can demolish how many ever houses you want to demolish, but the fact is this daylight murder happened and 5 people who are involved in this crime are still Farar. What are you doing to catch them?
My Ram Ram to everyone. And the reality is, whatever Yogi Adityanath ji has promised when he took the oath as a Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh 2017, he is wholeheartedly following it. He said, मैं यहाँ पर अपराधियों को नेस्तनाबूद कर दूंगा, माफिया डॉन्स जो हैं यहाँ पनप नहीं पाएंगे, यहाँ पे जो अपराधीकरण है उसको मैं कम कर दूंगा. This is what he's working on. And today he referred about Ram Raj. Ram Raj means your duties. आपके कर्तव्य क्या हैं? ये भगवान श्री राम का धर्म बताता है. And this is what any of us should do or follow. So this is what Ram Raj is. But unfortunately, any political party or the leader who has got allergy from Bhagwan Shri Ram's name, they are not able to understand. And if we talk about the bulldozer politics, definitely any building, whether it is a residential building, commercial building, industrial building, if they have not followed the rules and regulation of that particular development authority, then definitely that authority has got all the rights to demolish it. So it is they are doing something legal, and the demolished buildings were illegal.
No,
So
Anila ji,
anybody
that part I agree. I mean, if they have illegally encroached, they have not cleared their papers, please go ahead and demolish. But this can't be a signal to what happened in Prayagraj, signal to the criminals who were involved in that shootout that happened. Because like I said, Guddu Muslim is still Farar, Nafeez Ahmed is still Farar, Mohammad Ghulam is still Farar. I mean, what are you doing to catch them?
See, few are sorted out and rest others very soon they will be caught and they'll be put behind the bars. So there shouldn't be any sort of doubt about it.
Okay.
Any sort of doubt about it, because this is, Yogi ki sarkar, Yogi ki police. They are not going to spare them.
Okay.
They dare to do in Prayagraj, they have to face the consequences.
I'll get Ghanshyam for one quick response before I go to Arun Anand and to BL Vora. Ghanshyam, there was a picture of one of these accused, Sadakat Khan, along with leaders of your party. Now, you're saying anybody can be photographed with anyone. But again, the BJP is using this to push the messaging that Samajwadi Party to goons ke party hai.
Well, BJP can push that, but let me tell you something, Zaka. 147, 148, 153, 295, 297, 307. These are not cricket scores. These are the kind of cases that Mr. Adityanath had in 2017 against him. And his government worked, and he worked overnight and overtime for 5 years to ensure that such cases don't stand. And the Deputy CM will compete with him. 148, 188. If you look at, anyone can look at the ADR report that says that any big leader in BJP, with such cases, they don't limit at 1 or 2. They go on in multiples of 10 and 20. So BJP cannot preach, but they can definitely use propaganda to preach that they are closer to Bhagwan Ram and they are closer to to removing criminals. But the reality is that the article last year read that BJP MLA among 40 accused of illegally selling plots in Ayodhya. So they are not even closer to Bhagwan Ram. So even there, they were indulging in scams.
Let me come back to the issue at hand, and I want to ask Arun Anand this. Clearly, when it comes to political messaging, this might work because, the common man is looking at this bulldozer action. In fact, Yogi's got this nickname also now, Bulldozer Baba. So the common man is turning around and saying, Baba sabko theek kar rahe hain, matlab sabko sabak sikha rahe hain. But point is two things. One, the legality of it. And two, Arun Anand, is this going to help solve crimes, or is this going to rid Uttar Pradesh of these mafia dons?
I think, Zaka, you raised two questions. One is the legality of it. I think your reporter had mentioned, and you also mentioned that notices were served. I think there are courts of law. You can go to the court of law if something like this has happened. And so far as I know that no such action by the bulldozers has been, struck down by the courts. And even in this case, the Atiq Ahmed and his brother, they had approached the court saying that the UP government, UP police want their custody, but the UP police had refused, and the court basically refused to, entertain their petitions. So one is, that is the legality aspect. The second is that, of course, these kind of things do send a very strong message. And I think in a state like Uttar Pradesh, we have seen that there has been considerable improvement in law and order situation on the ground level. People are feeling much safer. And so I think the actions or the impact, is speaking, louder than, any assessment that we often tend to do as, drawing room intellectuals. I'm basically talking more about myself. So, and I happen to travel also, to do a lot of on-ground writing, on-ground reporting, and, to write about things. So there has been considerable improvement. People can, and in this Atiq Ahmed case, this recent incident, a cop was also killed.
Yeah.
So that thing has gone out of discussion. So even broad daylight, they are killing, cops. So I think a very strong message has to be sent down. Otherwise, there will be no fear of law. So I think it's working pretty well on the ground. But the important thing is that one has to be careful, that they do not go overboard about this. And for that, you have this code of law. So I think.
So let me ask B.L. Vora, as former DGP, from merely a purely policing point of view, to get rid of criminals or to send a message that, look, this kind of activities will not be tolerated. Yes, from that point of view, maybe this action is serving its purpose. But as Ghanshyam was saying, you never know when the shoe is on the other foot, like what happened in Kanpur, where there was this young lady and her daughter. Again, the state claims that they were in violation of building bylaws and so on. But unfortunately, while the bulldozer action was happening, they got burnt alive inside their house. So there is the risk of things going south.
See, the police can always commit mistakes also. It is not as if they are gods. But to say that because some people were burnt there and here also the action is incorrect, that will not be the right thing to do. Now, let me tell you, coming to this case particularly, Mr. Zaka, I want to make a few comments. Police has done the right thing. Some people are absconding. They would be arrested very soon, I am sure. Many teams have been found by the police. They are collecting electronic and other evidence also. But the matter of worry is that many of these gangsters, in spite of setbacks, they are still emboldened, and they sent so many teams to kill this one witness that they wanted to ensure that at no cost they failed. And they succeeded. They threw bombs and did all that kind of things. Second is, the security man being killed. I think that's a system of the police protection will have to be reviewed by the UP police very thoroughly, because what's the point in giving protection to a person if they are unable to save him? Okay. Instead, they themselves got killed. Now, these people like Atiq Ahmed and others, and there are many like that in UP and elsewhere also, they have been so strong that even they join different political parties. They become MP, MLA from one party, then they go to another party, then they go to third party. And every time they manage to win because they have so much of hold on the areas where they live, and all because of their money and muscle. I think things are not good at all. Political slugfest will continue because naturally they have to play their politics. But the fact remains that in this case, right action has been taken. And if they're wrong, there are always courts of law. They will definitely evaluate the evidence themselves, and those who feel aggrieved, they can go to a court of law.
So, Anilaji, isn't it a question worth pondering over? And I think Voraji also sort of alluded to this. Atiq Ahmed, sitting in a jail in Gujarat, thousands of kilometers away from UP, in Sabarmati jail, is able to hatch a conspiracy to carry out broad daylight murder of a protected witness. And he gets away with it, and 5 fellows who are involved in it get away with it. I mean, surely either Atiq Ahmed is far more powerful, he can carry out these killings sitting away thousands of kilometers, or something is wrong.
See, this was not conspired in Sabarmati jail, but it was conspired in one of the hostel rooms in Prayagraj.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So how it was conspired and who all were involved in it, everybody knows in today's date. And as I mentioned earlier, the action is on. few are under default, and rest others will be caught very soon. So the thing is, if Samajwadi Party, just now I was listening to Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari and he was saying, अरे इनके तो मुख्यमंत्री के ऊपर दफा ये, फलाना दफा ये, ढिमकाना दफा ये सारी की सारी IPC, CRPC सब लगी हुई है, and he is the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh. So I have to ask him, aren't these all dharas politically inspired? उनको तो आपकी पार्टी ने जान से मारने की पूरी साजिश रचती थी. आप हत्या करवाना चाहते थे योगी आदित्यनाथ जी की, and everybody knows about it. What you're talking? So in Purvanchal, this Samajwadi Party or BSP, I can say so, even Congress. In today's date, Congress doesn't exist in Uttar Pradesh, but in yesteryears, I will say, they have always been very scared of Gorakhnath Peeth. He's a Peethadishwar as well. The type of language Samajwadi Party spokespersons use for them, it is shameful. In one of the debates I was sitting, and their spokesperson said, अरे हमारे अखिलेश यादव जी ने तो अतीक अहमद को पार्टी में ज्वाइन करने से मना करा दिया, डीपी यादव को मना करा दिया, उसको मना करा दिया. He doesn't want to encourage mafia culture. Then I have to ask Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Tiwari, please tell. Even I asked that spokesperson as well, कि अतीक अहमद के गुर्गे, अतीक अहमद के रिश्तेदार अखिलेश यादव जी के साथ खड़े होकर, इतने क्लोजली खड़े होकर फोटो कैसे खिंचा पा रहे हैं? When your leader says that he doesn't encourage Mafia Raj, the reality is the true face of Samajwadi Party or BSP is that they encourage Mafia Raj. They encourage Don Gardi because this is their parallel industry. They want money. They want to circulate that money.
Okay.
दहशतगर्दी से अगर वोट डलती है तो ये वोट डलवाएंगे. But योगी जी and योगी जी की सरकार is very different. ये दहशतगर्दी करने वालों को जमीन में गाड़ देंगे और उनको मट्टी में मिला देंगे.
Ghanshyam Tiwari, respond.
Well, if a good elocution could save BJP from facts, then it would work. But the reality is, in March 2018, the Times of India carried a headline that Atiq Ahmed would be the Hanuman for Bharatiya Janata Party in the Phulpur bypolls. The man was in the jail. So BJP, when it is convenient, will make Atiq Ahmed their Hanuman for a Lok Sabha bypoll. And this was a seat left by Keshav Prasad Maurya, the Deputy Chief Minister. So it wouldn't happen without Deputy Chief Minister acting as the super Hanuman. So clearly BJP has no place to hide when you talk about the criminals in their party. No other party in the history of India has sent 100 MPs with criminal charges. Let that sink in. As far as this situation in Uttar Pradesh is concerned, Lok Sabha was told that there were 952 custodial deaths recorded in Uttar Pradesh since 2020, the highest. Whether it is the Dikshit Parivar, whether it is the custodial deaths, whether it is a SP in Mahoba who was on the run because he conspired with police officers to kill a businessman, whether it was a killing in Gorakhpur, killing in Lucknow. You can read
Ghanshyam, sorry, I'm interrupting, but you have listed out a number of cases, and it's no one's case that UP has been rid of crime. But surely, are you saying that the perception that there used to be this Mafia Raj, and I'm not saying, it happened during SP's time or BSP's time or any other time, but there was a perception in UP that Mafia Raj was running it some years ago. You're saying that perception has also not changed?
Well, I am saying that the propaganda behind that perception, the perception is up to the people to judge, and they vote, and we accept the people's vote. But the propaganda behind the perception, when you have 111 MLAs with criminal charges, your defense of serious charges that were there against Mr. Adityanath is some bizarre allegation against Samajwadi Party. You don't even have a defense against Keshav Prasad Maurya. Every day newspapers talk about your members of parliament such as Brij Bhushan Singh. The entire Olympic squad of Indian wrestlers is standing against him and accusing him of sexual harassment, and the BJP is silent. All I'm saying is, the propaganda doesn't change the fact that crime is deeply infested and invested into BJP. Okay. And as a result, you see the kind of leaders that rise. And they are playing this current set of things only because their hollow claims were exposed by the sensational crime in Prayagraj.
Okay, Mr. Vora wants to respond to this. Mr. Vora, again, the point that Ghanshyam is making is, how can one party claim to be squeaky clean when they have over 100 MLAs who have criminal records, whereas Samajwadi Party is always accused of quote-unquote running a Mafia Raj. What is good for the goose should be good for the gander.
The point is, if you see in the Lok Sabha, statistics say that 43% of the MPs, they have criminal backgrounds.
Yeah.
And these people with criminal background, their number has been increasing over the years. With each Lok Sabha and subsequent Lok Sabha, the number has been more. And they are all in the same boat, all political parties. One cannot point out finger at the other one. Of course, partly it is because many cases are due to political reasons are there. But having said that, so that is why these people who are there, they don't want to leave the control of the police. I wanted to come to that. There are no police reforms. They don't leave the police alone to do its duty on its own, whereas police should be responsible to the parliament or the assembly. They are answerable to these politicians. That is the law of the land. This political control is one major reason. Otherwise, you tell me, Mr. Zaka, how these dons can become MPs and even ministers? Is it possible?
Yeah, I think the politicization of the police forces.
Today we are blaming the BJP government. Yesterday we were blaming the SP. Before that, the BSP.
Okay. No, so the politicization of the police force, I think, is a point well taken. It's not a new phenomena. It's been happening for a number of years, perhaps even decades. But Arun Anand, just to expand on this, there is the legality, constitutionality, police reforms. We can keep talking about this till, the cows come home. But ultimately, what matters in a democracy is what the people think and how the people vote. And there is evidence to show that over the last 2 election cycles at least, that a good number of people believe that UP has been rid of major crime. And this is one of the USPs of Yogi Adityanath. Whether that has bearing in fact, or whether that, like Ghanshyam was listing out a number of cases that have happened over the last 2 years. But is that, acquiring critical mass in a way that his record is being tarnished?
Zaka, I think what is important is to look at the intent of the government. And that intent of the government, if it is largely to curb the crime and to take, the mafias and the gangsters head on, and, to ensure that there is law and order, then of course, there would always be, as Mr. Bura was also mentioning, and as you also mentioned, that we have a very archaic kind of a police structure, and we have a very colonial police structure, and there are inbuilt inefficiencies in that. So there would be always, slip-ups there, and though nobody can justify it, they have to be taken care of also. But what is important is the intent of the government. So, and the police also acts because police being part of the bureaucracy. So the intent of the government seems to be pretty okay as far as Yogi Adityanath's government is concerned.
Okay.
And another small point which I want to bring in, Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari was saying that there's a lot of propaganda. See, law and order is one thing on which no propaganda can stick, because people experience these things in their day-to-day life, everyday life, when they get out of their home or when they have to come back home in the late evening. So if people are supporting Yogi Adityanath's government, so that means basically, it's not propaganda. It's basically they delivered it on the ground.
Okay.
But they have to be very
careful. So let Ghanshyam respond to that. I mean, one of the things about law and order is you can do how much of a propaganda you want, but ultimately law and order, if crime is bad, it is visible in front of your eyes. People experience it firsthand.
That's a good argument, but the propaganda is not on the crime that people face or don't face. The propaganda is when atrocities happen, when you create spectacles just because a massive failure and a sensational crime has happened. The entire spectacle that is playing out, right? It's not that every day crime does not happen in Uttar Pradesh. You just take the number of murders. You'll say that there are multiple murders in a day across Uttar Pradesh. You don't see the visuals that you see because those crimes don't reach the media and they don't call out the claim of Adityanath ji as fake. This particular crime, it is playing out in front of media because they want to make a tamasha of it after their massive failure. And as far as what people don't read as clearly is the atrocities that go behind when you give a police a free hand to indulge in encounter, to indulge in this kind of extrajudicial procedure, and to subvert the system. The journalists will be put behind bars, such as Siddiqui Kapan. As a result, media will stop reporting. the people will be given a state-led propaganda that there is no crime, and the system will continue to foist.
So Anila ji, final word. ये सब तमाशा है, ये spectacle है, ये spectacle से आप कानून व्यवस्था ठीक नहीं कर पाएंगे. Ghanshyam says there are tons of crimes that happen in Uttar Pradesh. Many of them don't even make it to the newspapers or to television channels.
So, Zaka, this question is from me?
Yes, for you, ma'am. Yeah.
So, what to say about these Bhagwa haters and mafia lovers? Do you expect that they are going to say something positive about Bhagwadhari Mukhyamantri of Uttar Pradesh? Of course not. And let me tell Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari and others as well who are Bhagwa haters. Yes, for Bharatiya Janata Party, our war crime is Jai Jai Shri Ram, and we are going to say it. And if you feel that this is something wrong, you can very well go ahead and use any sort of the term whichever you want. But the reality is, if we talk about the tenure of Yogi Adityanath ji in Uttar Pradesh, yes, if we talk about the dacoity, it has come down 70%. Dacoity 70%, loot 70%, murders 30%, balwa it is 33%. Kidnapping, it has reduced by 35%. And it is not my Anila Singh as a spokesperson of Bharatiya Janata Party statistics. You can very well go and compare it from the NCRB statistics.
All right.
I definitely challenge here that you cannot rattle or shackle Yogi Adityanath ji. जब Yogi Adityanath ji विधानसभा में गरज रहे थे, मट्टी में मिला देने की बात कह रहे थे, तो अखिलेश यादव जी की जबान जो है लड़खड़ा रही थी.
Okay, I have to leave it at that. We'll see how this story plays out, because ultimately the success for the police forces in this case will be on holding those 5 accused who are right now absconding, in apprehending them and putting them through the judicial process, putting them through a trial. But we'll see how this story plays out, both in the public domain as well as in the courts of law. Meanwhile, the other big story that we're tracking, India is hosting the G20 Foreign Ministers Summit. This is coming at a crucial juncture as the world remains divided between 2 blocs over the Ukraine war. There is the West and its partners, America and its European partners, and then you have Russia and China on the other hand. This meeting is one of the biggest events ahead of the final summit, which is slated to take place in September. For India, which holds the current G20 presidency, it will be a challenge to make the meeting a success, even more so because of what happened last week at the G20 Finance Ministers meeting, which could not agree on a joint communique because of differences over the Russia-Ukraine war. Does this war threaten India's G20 moment?
No plans to see either at the G20, although I suspect that we'll certainly be in group sessions of one kind or another together.
So the G20, or the Group of 20, is an intergovernmental forum comprising 19 countries in the European Union. It works to address some of the major issues relating to the global economy, like international financial stability, climate change, sustainable development. The G20 is composed of most of the world's largest economies. It accounts for around 85% of global GDP, also 75% of international trade. 2/3 of all of the global population is from these 20 top economies of the world, and 60% of the world's land area is controlled by these 20 member countries. The G20, in fact, was founded in 1999. This was in response to several world economic crises. Since 2008, the global financial crisis, the G20 has convened at least once a year, with summits involving each member's head of government or state, or finance minister, or even foreign ministers and other high-ranking officials. And this year, India plays host to 19 other member states in New Delhi. Now, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is likely to overshadow the G20 talks in India because there is concern that a new Cold War is looming. The West's focus on the all-consuming war in Ukraine. Russia will have a seat at the table after expressing reservations at the last meeting in Bali. Top U.S. diplomat, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, has confirmed that he has no plans to meet either the Russian foreign minister or the Chinese foreign minister face-to-face. But this is the first time that they will be meeting. They will be in the same room since the G20 meeting in Bali last November. Now, there's also the spy balloon fiasco. The US Secretary of State has also said that he has no plans to meet his Chinese counterpart, Qin Gang, on the sidelines of the G20. Blinken had a fiery encounter with China's top diplomat Wang Yi last month in Germany after the US shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon. At that time, the United States has slammed China of unacceptable violation of US sovereignty and international law. Beijing responded by saying that Washington's stance on Taiwan denied that it used the spy balloons and said that the craft was for weather research. Meanwhile, on the Indian side, the Union Minister for External Affairs, S. Jaishankar, is also set to hold over a dozen bilateral meetings with his counterparts. There is no clarity regarding the foreign ministers' meeting of Quad members because of the absence of the Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi. The State Minister for Foreign Affairs has instead been deputed. Whether the Quad meeting happens, we don't know just yet. Meanwhile, tomorrow's agenda, it includes rising food and energy prices. This, of course, is a fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war. There is the global climate challenge. There is increasing debt of developing nations, reformed multilateralism in international institutions and bodies, cooperation to counter terrorism, and, of course, the most important of all, and perhaps the one that has the longest shadow looming over the G20 meeting, is the Russia-Ukraine war. All right, let me go across to our guests who are joining us. Sushant Sareen is Senior Fellow with the Observer Research Foundation. Achal Malhotra is former diplomat. Ray Locker, Senior Journalist and author from Washington, D.C. And Fred Wire is a political analyst and Russia correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor. He's joining us live from Moscow. Sushant Sareen, let me start with you first. The G20 was not formed as a body to deal with war or to bring warring parties together. It was essentially an economic forum. But India, much like Indonesia last year, has the onerous task of doing this in the middle of a war. What are the chances that India's G20 moment, this foreign ministers' meeting, may not be able to come to a joint statement on the meeting itself because parties can't agree on the language to be used about the war?
Zaka, if the finance ministers' meeting was anything to go by, then this is mission impossible. In the finance ministers' meeting, you could still argue that, look, we are talking about financial issues, then, why do we need to start referring to the Russian-Ukraine war? Although I think it has had a terrible bearing on the international economy, this war. It's devastated economies. It's created crazy problems for countries. But in the foreign ministers' meeting, this will be a major issue. So if you couldn't resolve it then, I don't see how you're going to be able to resolve it now. And if you can't resolve it now, then that kind of muddies the waters going forward when the summit level meeting takes place. So as of now, it's likely to be a deadlock, and breaking that deadlock seems like a bit of a mission impossible to my mind.
So, Achal Malhotra, what has then changed? The war was very much still on when the last G20 happened in Bali. They did get a joint communique out. You could argue with the language of it, but there was a joint communique. Have positions hardened further between the last G20 and this particular meeting in a way that, as Sushant said, it threatens the very idea that a joint communique itself may not be possible?
Yes, Zaka, I think since Bali summit was held, things have gone from bad to worse. The tensions are rising between the West and Russia, with China and the United States of America. You also mentioned in your opening remarks the recent tensions which came to fore because of the spy balloons and things like that. So definitely the positions are, both sides have taken strong positions. And the British Foreign Office and the Russian Foreign Office, on the eve of the visits of their foreign ministers to New Delhi, have already issued statements which set the tone. They are already indicative of the kind of situation we are going to see when the deliberations of the foreign ministers start. British Foreign Office has given clear indications that the British Foreign Minister is going to strongly call out Russia, condemn, and reiterate the position of the G7 and other Western countries.
Okay.
And the Russian Foreign Ministry has also taken a very tough stand. So it looks, when it was announced that G20 presidency India is going to hold, everybody had anticipated that this is being held in a very difficult geopolitical scenario, and India will have to face a very, kind of a challenge of its own kind. And at this point of time, it looks very difficult for India to be able to, bring about a consensus in the, conflicting positions of the two sides.
Let me ask Ray Locker. The issue again comes back to Western countries led by the United States. Despite this almost unending tap of weapons and military aid that's being given to Ukraine, Ukraine today is not in a position to overpower Russia and decisively win this war, at least move in that direction. And yet at the same time, the US and its European partners are not able to keep Russia or China out of the room from these multilateral forums and meetings like the G20. So you're basically putting the rest of the world between a rock and a hard place.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. Look, I mean, that was naked aggression on the part of Russia. You can't just let that slide and say, oh, we're just going to go to this multilateral meeting and not talk about it or not do anything about it. But just because there's no joint communique doesn't mean anything, things don't happen. There's a lot of people there having meetings. This is a chance for India to work around the margins and meet with all these different partners to do what it needs to do. And so that's what a lot of these countries will do. They'll go and they'll try to cut side deals. They'll use the opportunity of this summit to meet with people they don't ordinarily see and see what happens. And a lot of times at meetings like this, just like the UN General Assembly, that's what happens. I mean, the US-Iran nuclear deal of like 10 years ago, in 2015, a lot of that happened on the sidelines at UNGA. So that can happen at G20.
No, but
I think it is unlikely to see
the U.S. Secretary of
happen.
State, sorry, I'm interrupting. The U.S. Secretary of State has already ruled out meeting either his Chinese counterpart or the Russian counterpart.
Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, he can meet with other people. You never know. He's saying that, but he may meet with them anyways. Just because he said that now doesn't mean it's not going to happen. People bump into each other in hallways. There are surreptitious meetings. That's what happens at these things. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it happened this time. I don't think anything great is going to happen from it, but it's possible.
So Fred, why are we then left with, the kind of spectacle that we saw last year when Indonesia hosted the summit? Vladimir Putin did not turn up. Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, did turn up. He was there for one day and then did not go for the main summit day itself. He left that very evening, and there was this whole drama around, will he attend, will he not attend, and so on and so forth. So are we to expect a similar kind of spectacle this time around as well?
I mean, I would expect it.
Fred Wire. Fred Wire, thank you.
Yeah, I agree that the meeting is worth holding, and India has an unenviable task in trying to pull something out of it. I think we may expect something better just because we're a year in. Positions are clear. The world is polarized. There's just no reconciling positions. They're going to be aired. The problem here is to find some positive things. And Russia and China are awfully important countries. You couldn't envisage a G20 that didn't contain them. And organizations like that should be made for crises like this.
Okay.
So things can happen on the sidelines. As Ray said, but also there is positive business to be carried out. There are issues, and I believe Indian foreign policy stresses development, climate change, these kind of things that all of these countries together need to talk about. So let's see. I hope that the Western countries by now are. Like they have their points to make. They're very valid points, but they are by now accustomed to confronting the Indians, the global South.
I want to sort of segue into a related matter because it happens on the sidelines of the G20, and that is as we see the first pictures of Secretary of State Antony Blinken landing at the Delhi airport. He's just arrived. He's not part of the dinner that's happening right now at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. You can see Elizabeth Jones, who is the acting ambassador at the US mission here in Delhi. She's there by his side. There is an Indian government official who's receiving him. I can't tell who that is because I can't see his face. That gentleman has his back to the picture, to the cameras. So these are the first pictures of Tony Blinken arriving at the Delhi airport. He will head straight to the hotel. He will not be taking part in the dinner. Tomorrow morning is when the first official meeting happens, the first session of the G20 at a little past 9 o'clock. It's going to happen in Rashtrapati Bhavan. But let me go back to Sushant Sareen. I want to segue to a related issue because it happened on the sidelines. When the UK Foreign Secretary met Dr. Jaishankar this morning, one of the issues that came up was about the BBC raids. While there is pressure on the Sunak government, on the Conservative government, on to be seen to be doing something about it, do you believe that this issue will cause consternation? It's not just the British, but even the Americans have been talking about, at least in hush-hush tones, about India becoming intolerant and religious freedoms and so on and so forth.
Zaka, do the British or the Americans give tax breaks to their newspapers or news channels which are working out there? If they don't conform to the law, does the law come into action out there, or it does not come into action out there? So if, for example, the government has taken any action which is not which is vindictive, and there is absolutely no wrongdoing on the part of the BBC, then I think it'll come out openly and clearly. But if, for example, the BBC has been evading taxes or flouting any laws, then should not any questions be asked of the BBC simply because it is British press or colonial press, if you will?
Okay.
So I this sense of entitlement which some of these people have, it's pretty galling to any self-respecting country. You can. I could raise 50 issues on how the British media operates. I could raise 50 issues on how how much of control or how much of influence is exercised on the British media, especially when it matters on matters of national security. So for them to pretend as though they are pure and lily white and everybody else has these rough edges where it's their burden to smoothen out all of that, I don't think that's an acceptable thing anymore.
Okay.
I think we need to tell them to lay off.
Achal Malhotra, there seems to be this narrative, particularly in the Western media, and you can agree or disagree with it, that on the one hand, India is, of course, a huge economy. It's a big market. Everybody is courting India. It's also a hugely important strategic player, which is why our presence in the Quad and the Indo-Pacific. But at the same time, there is this narrative that India is becoming, an intolerant country. Press freedoms are being trampled upon. The BBC raids, the George Soros controversy, or even today, for example, many are citing this FCRA license of one of the leading think tanks being cancelled. Is that something that India should be bothered about?
No, I don't think so, because all that we are doing within the framework of our rules, regulations, and law. And as Sushant has very clearly said, if there is anything wrong about it, the accused will get scot-free. But if it is guilty, just because somebody belongs to a particular, has origins in the West and is immune from, any scrutiny, that's not acceptable. And let me add to it, Zaka, that all these Western countries have their own yardsticks to measure others. They don't look at the kind of human rights situation in their own country. Take, for example, United States of America. What is the status of, the kind of blatant racism which prevails in that country? They should first set the house in order, then only should try and comment upon the others. Okay. And they have their own European, so-called European Western standards and Western values, and they try to measure everybody according to those standards, which is not a correct approach.
Okay, and so Ray Locker, I'll give Ray Locker and Fred Wire the final word. I'm coming back to, obviously the number one issue, the issue that's going to be casting a long shadow on this meeting is going to be the Russia-Ukraine war. But have we got to a stage, willy-nilly, after 1 year of this war, you're seeing a very, very clear axis emerge. You have the United States, its European partners, Britain, France, Germany on the one side, firmly entrenched on the Ukrainian corner. And then you have this very, very powerful emerging axis of Russia and China. Now, you may not want to call it the new Cold War, but it seems like it has the trappings of one.
No, it certainly does. I mean, and it's up to the Biden administration and its allies around the world, including India in many ways, to do something about it. I mean, seems pretty clear to me. Whose side do you want to be on? You want to be on Russia's side? They're killing people indiscriminately. And China is kind of giving them a wink and a nod to do it. And I don't think that's the course that any really civilized country wants to go down.
But by almost unendingly weaponizing Ukraine and this almost unending tap of weapons that are being provided to Ukraine, no party in this conflict seems to be incentivized to look towards a ceasefire. And that's a problem. It's like everybody wants this war to continue. This war is good business for all sides involved. Ray Locker? All right, let me ask Fred Wire that question. Okay, Fred Wire, I'll give you the final word. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the war is definitely going to go on. There are no grounds for peace talks at this point, but just neither side has even the beginnings of a vision of how to end it. So we're going to see much more movement on the battlefield, and maybe, I mean, tragically, that's how it's going to play out in the coming months. As for the G20, yes, the world is polarized, but what the countries that they call the global South are standing aside. They're not part of either side in this new Cold War, and they clearly don't want to be. And I think that it matters a lot whether the Western countries, the United States in particular, can find a language to address them, which isn't this get on board the moral crusade train, because that's clearly not working. And we'll see how Russia addresses them. Russia has its own ways of talking to countries in Asia and Africa and Latin America, and they're making a lot of headway there. It has to be admitted. So this G20 can be positive.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. I think you made a point that should be well taken, because this idea that the global South is pretty much sitting this one out. It was borne out by the last vote that happened just ahead of the one-year anniversary of the war last week at the UNGA, and there were about 20-odd countries, maybe 24 countries that abstained, including India, and they would very well qualify as the global South. So I think certainly from America and its Western partners, there needs to be a more compelling case if you want countries like India and others in the global South on your side on this war, because I think this whole idea of this is a moral crusade, that is somehow not working. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. We'll be right on top of this story. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. will be the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting that will begin. But before that, we'll be there nice and early for our election coverage. 3 states, Nagaland, Manipur, Meghalaya. In fact, Nagaland, Tripura, Meghalaya will be delivering its results. It's going to be huge stakes, not just for the BJP and the Northeast Democratic Alliance, as it were, but also for the opposition parties. Can they ring one or two back and try and halt the election-winning juggernaut that the BJP seems to have become in the Northeast? We'll have that coverage live from 7 a.m. Do tune in to CNN News 18. Thanks for your time.
To have his deputy CM and somebody to whom he's allocated 18 portfolios, including finance, to have people watch him go to jail, as he knows that there is already a minister, Satyendra Jain, who's been there for a while. I won't even say languishing, because he seems to be he doesn't seem to be suffering there, as the visuals show. But the fact of the matter is that it was absolutely impossible to have, before the budget, your finance minister go there. And I think there'll be an effort made for Arvind to show himself, distance himself from the two of them. And if this was the reason, if portfolio management was the reason, why wasn't Satyendra Jain asked to resign earlier?
No, but why are you saying that he's going to distance himself from them? Shalini Singh was saying that it's not a question of distancing. They're completely backing both their ministers. and she's saying it's not an admission of guilt. Why do you say this is Kejriwal distancing himself from his two associates?
The reason why I say this is because he knows that Manish Sisodia is not going to come out in a jiffy. It'll take him a while. We heard what Supreme Court said, and we know that the High Court will be looking at all the investigation details and the evidence that has been submitted. So, which is why it was impossible for Arvind Kejriwal to continue with the two. Now, what happens with the not just the image, which is of course has been a big hit for them, but the expansion plans of Aam Aadmi Party. Do you see him keeping Manish Sisodia in charge of the portfolios while he's in the jail, along with Satyendra Jain, as well as many others, to be seen as somebody with them asking votes, especially somebody who comes from a anti-corruption background? I mean, that was the genesis of this party, wasn't it? That's why all of us were there. I think
that's a fair point to ask, that you can't go to Gujarat or to Karnataka or Rajasthan or wherever else Aam Aadmi Party wants to expand next, Ishkaran Bhandari, and ask for votes in the name of an anti-corruption plank when two of your most important ministers are in jail. Now, again, no one is saying that they are guilty. Nothing has been proven in a court of law. These cases have not gone to trial yet. But you cannot, in the court of public perception, you cannot be asking for the votes of people on an anti-corruption plank when two of your closest ministers are in jail.
Zaka, if you are pronounced guilty, then it's a matter of law that you cannot hold office. Judgments have come if you are pronounced guilty for more than 2 years. So this is obviously a morality area. And we have traveled a lot from the days of Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri, who resigned for a railway accident, even though that cannot strictly be ascribed to the minister. And in this case, Mr. Satyendra Jain's case, a PIL was moved in the Delhi High Court, where the Delhi High Court dismissed that PIL, saying that it's the cabinet, the chief minister's decision to keep somebody in the cabinet or not cabinet. They didn't want to interfere in it. They didn't want to usurp the powers of the chief minister. But increasingly, it would have become untenable if a minister like Mr. Sisodia in jail with 18 portfolios, and further petitions would have been filed, which would have probably caused further embarrassment, whatever be the legal decision. Thus, I think it is not an extraordinary thing for them to have resigned. But what is interesting in this case is, as you started the debate, why one person's resignation was not taken for 9 months, why the other person resigned in 2 months, Delhi being the capital and the political capital. There would be a lot of speculation on that, which is for Aam Aadmi Party to answer. But definitely, as a practice, morality, a person in jail should not be a minister, be it from any party.
No, Manasvi Thapar, one other question that Delhiites are asking tonight is, why is the Chief Minister not taking any of these portfolios? Between Manish Sisodia and Mr. Satyendra Jain, they control more than 20 portfolios. The Chief Minister is a Chief Minister without any portfolios. I mean, people of Delhi did not vote for Kailash Gehlot or for R.K. Anand. They voted for Kejriwal. Why is Mr. Kejriwal not taking any portfolios?
Zaga, it's a very interesting question, but the reality is lots of chief ministers don't take up lots of portfolios. While Modi ji was the chief minister of Gujarat, he did not have the most of the cabinet ministry. While people voted for him, the ministers keep on changing and the ministry keep on shuffling while he was here in Gujarat. So it's upon the chief minister, it's upon the cabinet council. But the reality is, I think it's a great step when there is an allegation, when there is a pre-trial until you are proven guilty. While the trial is on, you resign for your position. It's a great step from Lal Bahadur Shastri. Right now we are seeing Manish Sisodia doing it. It reminds me of the case of Lakhimpur Kiri, where Ashish Mishra did not resign while his son was still there.
No. Manasvi, once again, let me reframe my question. Of course, it's the prerogative of the Chief Minister. He can decide who's part of the cabinet. He can decide which portfolio goes to who. And if he so chooses, he doesn't want any portfolios, that's up to him. But the point is this. When I say people of Delhi voted for Kejriwal, they did not vote for Kejriwal to go and campaign in Gujarat or campaign in Punjab or campaign in Maharashtra. They want Kejriwal to run Delhi. The business of running Delhi had been effectively given to Mr. Sisodia and now to Mr. Gehlot. Mr. Gehlot controls, I think, about more than 10 portfolios. He is de facto running the administration of Delhi while Mr. Kejriwal is busy expanding the party. That's the intent of my question.
Zaka, you are bang on that, but the same question could be reframed in a way that why does the Prime Minister